Good evening, wherever you are. This is the Gildarie Freddie Kissoon Show. Leonard Gildarie would not be here this evening and Wednesday evening. He has given us assurance he will be here on Friday evening. Leonard Gildarie has a pet subject in his introduction. He talks about the traffic situation and erratic driving. Since I am doing the introduction this evening, my pet subject is that people must buy local. As if you've been looking at the program, I've always advocated that. So, tonight, I'm advocating that you continue to support local industry and buy local. Now, tonight we have two interesting guests, interesting in three sense of the word. Their political evolution, their independent mind, and the ethnicity makeup. Now, the two of them need no introduction. Will Johnson has been on the literary scene for some time. I think he won the Guyana Prize twice. And Jonathan Yearwood has catapulted himself, or events catapulted him into the eyes of the Guyanese people during the 2020 election. Before we get into the questions, I think there is something that's never been said before or known before about these two well-known gentlemen on the social and political scene. Many people have spoken to me and referred to Jonathan Yearwood as a Portuguese. In fact, he's not a Portuguese. I work closely with Father Morrison, and Father Morrison used to tell me when people refer to him as a Portuguese. Father Morrison, the famous, phenomenal Father Morrison, editor of the Catholic Standard. Father Morrison was an Englishman. Yeah. An Englishman and a Portuguese are two different ethnicities. Jonathan Yearwood is 77% Caucasian, and the rest is African and Southeast Asian. Yeah. Will Johnson is Indian, Amerindian, Chinese.
Not Chinese, everything was Chinese.
Amerindian, Portuguese, African, and those are the three?
Four. Yeah.
What's the one I left out?
It's Portuguese, Indian,
Portuguese,
Amerindian,
Indian, and African.
Yeah.
So we have a potpourri of ethnicities here tonight. I haven't traced my ancestry, so I don't know. I have to stick with Indian. Yeah. Gentlemen, welcome to the program, and I am sure we're not going to be able to exhaust the dimensions of your thoughts, of your praxis, and your conceptualization in 1 hour. I think you guys have two things in common, and therefore some of my questions will be directed to both of you, and you answer it when each other is finished. I've known both of you to be people who have independent minds and do not take sides when it comes to political and ethnic issues, and you're not afraid to say, this is how I see it. I have known both of you in that way. Yeah. In fact, I had a little incident with Jonathan's group, Article 13, and in that story, he emerged, to my mind, as a very, very independent, principled person. I'm not allowed to talk about that unless he gives me permission this evening. So once again, gentlemen, let's do this alphabetically. Ruel, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out here. Okay, go ahead.
Pardon me?
I'm trying to figure out the alphabet.
Alphabetically in reverse.
Last name. It's last name.
It's last name. Well, it has to be last name if it's alphabetically.
Yeah.
Well, you joined the AFC. The AFC won power along with APNU, and you became the cultural advisor to Dr. Rupert Ruptarain, the Minister of Education. And then there was a gradual sliding away, both from government and your state position. Mm-hmm. You want to explain that journey?
Well, I didn't join the AFC, just this one. in the spirit of, I guess, independence, I've generally stayed away from joining any political party, although I've offered my advice and public support in the past. Now, with regard to my advising Dr. Rupnarain, the background to that was that my advocacy has primarily been in cultural policy. And leading up to the elections in 2015, I had an overseas funded project on cultural policy that I was working on, which I offered to turn over to Dr. Rupnarain. And Dr. Rupnarain asked me to come on and work with him and advise him on the implementation of the policy. The further development and the implementation of the policy. So there's the background to that. That sort of extended what was supposed to be like a short-time engagement to a much longer one, in which like a fully developed policy was created and handed over, awaiting implementation. In summary.
Okay, we'll get back to why you left the job. Now, I said they have three things in common, and I deliberately left out the third one. Both of them form political parties, and they're no longer in those political parties. So over to Jonathan. Jonathan, you made a name for yourself and for those who are fighting for democracy in the 2020 election. And I don't want this hour to elapse without an incident which I think upset people who were looking at it in and out of Guyana. And I want to get your description of what happened there before we go into ANUG and Article 13 and all those things you're associated with. You got arrested in an incident with Carol Joseph. People felt that given the track record of Ms. Joseph in Region 5 and her déportement and her aggression, that the police were not justified in arresting you. What happened during that election rigmarole in High Street at GCOM head office that Friday night with Mingo and his bed sheet?
Well, you got to go back to the morning of the day when we were in Ashman's building and they were doing the recount. And a lot of the figures, by then we had collected a lot of figures from polling stations, taking photographs of sheets that were posted up. Yeah. I myself collected about 15, 20 of those sheets physically. Plus we had TCI collecting, and we had a group of us who were looking at these figures and making records of it. And when Mingo was carrying on with his figures, we knew right away that this was not adding up. Yeah. These are not the same figures that we had. And some of us started to object to it. And lo and behold, Miss Joseph, in Ashman's building, started to carry on, started to verbally abuse people. She called Mr. Kit Nascimento a very nasty Portuguese. She threatened Pauline Chase, who is now the Bar Association president. She would kick her face in. She told the four heads of the missions, the American ambassador, the Canadian High Commissioner, British High Commissioner, and the Commissioner of the European Union, to get the hell out of here. We don't need you in here. And it was very upsetting. What was even more upsetting was that the Guyana police force, who was there to keep law and order, stood up and allowed all of this to take place. Eventually, Mingo was called away because the Chief Justice had made a ruling that the figures had to be seen, put up and seen. So they decided he was called away and everything came to a stop. Then they decided that they were going to have it back at GCOM's office, GCOM's compound, in the afternoon. When we went there in the afternoon, sat down, everything got up. There was the famous bed sheet, and there was a projector. Before we even started, one of the representatives from the European Union had got up and went to the projector to see what was happening.
Yeah.
Curiosity. And he was hollered on. Get away from here. Maybe not the exact words, but the tone was, get away from here, you don't belong here. Once the show started, two things happened. One, we couldn't see and read what was happening on the screen because it was blurry, it was out of focus. And two, whatever little we could see were not matching with what we had. So we were back to square one of what was happening in the early morning of that.
If I may, I believe it was also going ahead a bit fast.
Yeah, they were rushing it through.
Yeah.
They were running it through very rapidly. Eventually, I had enough of it, and I said, look, Mr. Mingo, anything happens in this country because of this election, you're directly responsible for it. I've had enough of this nonsense, I'm leaving. So I packed my laptop up, I packed my things up, and I got up to leave. As I was leaving, I have no idea where Carol Joseph was sitting at this point in time. I wasn't paying any attention to anybody sitting behind me or whatever. But as I was leaving, she rushed up to me. And looking at the videos, she came from about 4 or 5 rows back. So I was already on my way out. And she rushed up to me. Now, I grew up in Kitty. And I am number 4 of 4 boys. So it was tough, it was rough. You ever heard of fight or flight?
You're a tough white man.
She found out that. There's something called fight or flight. Your first reaction, fight or flight. Somebody rushes up into my space, my personal space, my reaction is fight. Instantly fight. And Carol made that mistake of coming up, rushing up to me into my space. She got into my space and I told her to get out, and she kept coming. So I was of 2 minds, and I took the lesser of the 2 and I pushed her away. She certainly didn't expect it, and she fell. The police at that point, who were doing nothing all the while, no protection, no anything, then rushed in and arrested me. They didn't arrest her for that. When I got down to Brickdown police station, where I was taken, the police asked me, the police in the jeep just dropped me there, reported to the officer in charge, and then left. So the officer in charge there sat down and he asked me, what really went on? By this time, the video was circulating on the phone. So I pulled out the phone, found the clip, and I showed him. He didn't say anything. He just said, you just sit right down there. And I sat down there for about half of an hour. And then eventually I was told I could leave. Okay. And that was the end of it. That was the end of it. But what I do know is that in May, during the recount, when I met Miss Joseph again, and I met her there again, along with all the PNC and the AFC people, she had healthy respect. She kept away from me. She did not intrude to me. She did not approach me to say anything to me. She kept her distance, which I was pretty happy about. I figured she had learned her lesson. This was one white man. Don't come and get annoyed.
Well, I know one thing.
70% white.
I know one thing.
70%
After
white
tonight,
man.
this program, people aren't going to refer to you as a Portuguese.
That's fine. I've grown up being called Portuguese. I've grown up being called Portuguese. So it's no big deal.
So she found out that some white, a local Guyanese white is a Guyanese. So you eventually moved off of your ministerial job.
My contract came to an end in 2019, and
I chose not to renew it.
Since from a year before, I chose not to renew it, and that was communicated clearly to the powers that be. But, yeah.
I want to ask you, were you happy in your position. No. I like to rephrase the question. Did you feel politically uncomfortable, given your background of not choosing sides and being independent? That's a high level job. Cultural advisor to the Minister of Education.
Well, I'd say this, and it's usually separating political sensibility from state work is often a fine line. For example, I was on, say, as I'll give a parallel, I was on the board of the Chronicle until the fiasco which led to the resignation
We'll come to that.
of both myself and several other board members. But my substantive position, on the one hand, what I was put there to do, which was to create a framework cultural policy, was in fact done since February of 2017, 2 years before my contract came to an end. That's the framework document. There were other things that had to be done that were derivative of the document that which kept me on. But by the time 2018 at least rolled about, what was clear to me was that it was a deliberate effort not to put this already created policy in place. In addition to that, you had issues wherein, for example, like one of the recommendations of the policy was to ensure that the Guyana Prize for Literature was reformed and brought into line with, say, like the Bocas Lit Festival. What we had was not just the lack of reformation of the Guyana Prize, but its complete removal. So in 2017, there was a call for, this was the only call for entries for the Guyana Prize for Literature under the Guyanese administration. And the Guyana Prize Committee gave the call. People actually submitted entries for that prize. 2017 came and went, 2018 came and went, and up to now nobody can say definitively what happened to the prize that year or subsequently. I know it's being brought back now, but this is a national award, and you can't say that it has any political characteristics. Certainly there were management issues, but you can't say there were any political characteristics because it was started by Desmond Hoyt in 1987, and it continued, albeit unevenly, within a certain space, from 2006 to 2011. But then it was brought back 2011, 2013, 2015. It was to be in 2017, but it was completely removed. And up to now, I don't have an answer to why it was removed completely. So by 2019, it was clear to me that there was no real intention to either put in place the policy as a whole or to take seriously the derivative recommendations coming out of it. There was a creative industries cash grant that was conceived since 2017. It was haphazardly implemented, I think, in either 2018 or 2019, with absolutely zero transparency. So you don't know who received it, to what amount, and what the total thing. I think they had about 20 million that was allocated to it.
And there was no accountability in who received what?
Up to now. This was with it being implemented about 2 years after the initial concept.
So where that 20 million went to?
I can say this. Anecdotally, anecdotally, I've heard people say, well, I received this thing. But again, there was no, and this is not to say that the people who deserved it who got it didn't deserve it. It's just we have no transparency with regard to who received it, under what conditions, under what judgment or what criteria. And the other issues, there were Guyanese creative people, and I could say this now, lost out on millions of dollars simply because government at the time just refused to ensure that we had representation at international fora, which were paid for by the people, by the way. Paid for by the people hosting the forums. And they just said, no, we're not interested.
I'm going to come back to you because you said two things there.
Yeah.
You worked under a man, Dr. Rupert Ryan, whose political revolutionary portfolio was so large that you would thought you and him would be buddies.
No, well, let me say this. I worked under three separate ministers. Dr. Rupert Ryan, Nicolette Henry, Dr. Henry, and George Norton. So there's three separate ministers because of how that changes in the portfolio.
Okay, he left.
So, yeah, that's just the big thing. And I could say this, my working relationship with Dr. Rupert Ryan was fantastic. In fact, the reason that I went into government in the first place was that he asked. There was nobody else who would have asked me to say, come work for me.
And the relationship with the
gone.
other two ministers were not the same.
No, my relationship with, I think that Nicolette Henry certainly tried. I have to give her credit for that with regard to what could have been possible.
So who didn't want this document, its plan? Jonathan, I'll come to you just now. This is interesting. This is for history. You said there was, who did that came from beyond the ministry?
I believe so. Because I'll tell you this.
No, you're always a frank guy. Let's start.
No.
Ranger or Harmon?
No, I don't believe Harmon. I mean, I believe I had a comfortable working relationship with Harmon. I think he received a lot of flack, but I think in many ways he was more progressive than people give him credit for, at least intentionally, with his intention. There was certainly, I can't confirm or thing, but there certainly was. This is a policy that I remember I personally ensured that every single minister of government got a copy of. And when I asked about, and this is from everybody from Nagamutu to Rupert Ryan to thing, there was sort of a black hole with regard to what was not being said with regard to how it did not move on or moved on. And it did not move on.
You're not known to be a diplomat, so
no, I'm not.
I am going to push you out of your diplomacy.
But I'm.
You look like you're talking about Goenja.
No, but the inference. I like accuracy in what I say. So I can't definitively say it was from Goenja. But if it is that the Prime Minister, because I remember going to Nagamutu and saying, "This thing's finished," and remember, we would have qualified for something called the International Fund for Cultural Diversity. And I remember from UNDP, for UNESCO, sorry. And I given the initial draft in, say, February of 2017. In March of 2017 was the deadline for application. March came and went. And I applied to UNESCO and got an extension to June. And in the interim, I spoke to everybody. And I said, this thing is critical. We put this thing forward. The country can benefit from this thing. I went to Nagamutu. Now, and at the time, I believe, Nicolette Henry. I was asked to produce a state paper on it. Okay. I give the state paper. Then I asked to produce a green paper on it. I produced a green paper. Then I was asked to produce a white paper on it. Produce the white paper. At the end of the day.
Well, you're multi-ethnic, so you're happy.
Anyway, so I can't definitively say, but there was enough inference that the refusal to move forward in it came from one central space. And I believe that was the characteristic.
Okay.
You're not sure where the resistance comes from, but so there isn't a definite no, but there's enough of a black hole at a particular space to say, yeah, this is the source of the resistance.
Well, I think people can draw their inference. Jonathan,
Yeah.
you were one of the founders of a political party that people believe was the logical replacement for the fallen down AFC. Maybe I could use the word dead meat because the AFC did say if they join with the PNC, they'll become dead meat. And that was quite laudable, and you were after the elections. You fought for Anug's right to have their votes counted. I don't want to say whether sadly or not. You're not in Anug anymore. Is that a long story?
No, actually, it's not a long story. Would you like to hear it?
I certainly would like to hear it. I think these things, why we persisted with Ruel, because I've learned tonight a little bit about, a little more of David Granger. And I'm sure people have made their logical deduction of what Ruel has said.
So before you go ahead, it's the same issue, by the way, with the Walter Rodney sign. There was at the National Archives. Nobody knew who gave the exact order
to remove
the sign. Yeah. But inference was clear.
Okay.
Yeah.
No. So the inference was clear, right? Well, you stick to your diplomacy.
Yeah.
It may be Granger who gave the thing. Jonathan, why are you not in Anug? There is always space for third parties in this country. People want third parties. I don't think anyone who likes this country, wants to see its future, would say, no, we got too much parties, let's stick with PNC and PPP. And I think you made a good political material. What happened with you and Anug? Yeah, we'd like to hear it, and the viewers would like to hear it.
If there's one thing I can hold my head up high on, is my integrity. My integrity is not up for sale. So, Anug was supposed to have an election in 2020, annual election in 2020. That was put off because of the recount. It was supposed to be I think it was in April 2020, and the turmoil from the general election was still continuing at that point in time. So it was put off. President Ali was sworn in on the 2nd of August 2020, and almost immediately after, I started pushing for Anug to have an annual general meeting because our time as leadership had passed. Let's have a new mandate. We had new members come in by then. Let us have a new mandate, whatever. I tried in September. I tried in October. I tried in December. I tried in January. Nobody except one other person was interested. Nobody on the executive.
You don't want to name that one other person.
The only other person that was interested, to be quite honest with you, was Mark France.
Not Ramkara, not Timothy Jonas, not Kian Jabur.
Well, I will say...
You don't want to call names.
I will say...
But I'm asking you.
I will say that the only person that showed any interest was Mark France. Let's leave it at that. I was told point blank. When I took this up, I was told point blank. You want to do an election? You do it yourself. Not the executive will do it. Not the executive will do it. You do it yourself. So I took it upon myself to do it.
To hold an election?
No. To organize an election. To organize the holding of an election. This is during COVID. So I went out and I asked people, how can you do an election online? I'm not IT tech. So I asked advice. And the advice that came up was Election Runner. There's a program called Election Runner that universities use where they got thousands of students who vote over different things.
Okay.
So I set it up. I ran a trial. Using the executive, and it worked beautifully. It gave you a result, and nobody could challenge the result because the result was published on your email.
Okay.
Everybody had to have an email. So it was published on your email, the results. Everybody saw it at the same time. Within 5 minutes of the election being closed, it had an opening time and a closing half time. At 5 minutes after the closing time, bop, the results are known. So it's very transparent. It's used all over the world. I had also asked that we change our constitution so that we could basically, by then we had found some of the things that were not functioning properly within our constitution, and we wanted to tweak them. So one member said they will take on that job. And the idea behind it was to have 2 elections, 2 votes. The first vote would have been to change the analog constitution to basically from a 1-year executive to a 2-year executive. It's a little difficult to get things done in 1 year.
Yeah.
Anybody on the executive will be able to tell you that. It's a little difficult to get things. So we wanted to move to a 2-year executive and change a few other articles, add in a few more as we were in the learning. It's a learning curve for us. So I wanted to do that before we did the election of the executives, so that the new executive would run for 2 years. Neither came to pass. Well, I'll have to backtrack at this point in time, because in April, we had run into the issue where one of our executive members was on the board of Guy Oil. Mr. Akani Blair was a member of Guy Oil's board of directors. And he was caught up in a fiasco where somebody was trying to sell Guy Oil 1 million barrels of oil or something to that effect. And he and somebody else had met with this dealer on a Good Friday morning at the dealer's home. He lives in Linden. So my
we getting into something.
my thing at this point was, we need to ask Mr. Blair to withdraw from the executive until this matter is sorted out.
But on this program, you're not imputing any wrongdoing to Mr.
This was I remember
This is public knowledge.
It was covered in the press.
This was covered in the press.
Just generally, yeah,
This
there was an
covered in
issue
the press.
with Guy Oil, etc.
Okay.
But what I'm saying is, my fight was Mr. Blair should not resign, withdraw from the executive until the matter is dealt with, and it comes to a reasonable conclusion. Because as an executive, we have to be better. We're supposed to be the party that was better than the PPP and the PNC and the AFC. We must set standards. And if one of our members had been challenged or caught up in that level of fiasco, we need to say, hey, back off, let's this sort itself out. And then if you're not guilty, we bring you back on. So that was one of the things. There was also another incident before that.
No, but don't go.
But
And
it was
that
a-
Blair
it was a
thing
build-up.
that Blair thing wasn't supported. It's so natural. It's so logical. You
No,
talk about integrity. You talk about accountability.
There again, the support only came from one side, from one person basically.
Jonathan Yearwood, you telling me that famous names in Anug consisting of quality lawyers, people who name a new and united Guyana, you are bringing up issues of integrity, issues of moral obligation, and one lone figure with you are for these changes. Well, I'm glad that we've had this program.
Freddie, you remember I
This-
started by saying my integrity is not for sale?
I know you and I respect your integrity. That incident with Article 13 have instructed me that you a politician for the future. But let's go on.
But
with this,
come back
with this
back to it. So I was told that, look, I have to do the election. So I organized it. I got how muchever members we had. I got all their email addresses. I did the election runner. And all I had to do, I even named the dates. The date we would have the vote for the change of the constitution and the date that we would have the vote for the new executive. Already sorted out. All I need is the executive to say, go. That go never came. When I kept pressing and I kept pressing and I kept pressing, it never came. So I decided at that point in time, y'all are not interested in changing this executive. What am I doing here? I'm not going to function under any means in which I don't have a mandate. I don't have a mandate. My mandate ended April whenever 2020. So I am now into 2021. This is what? 2 years over the mandate? Okay, we could understand, a year plus, we could understand because of the recounts and the election fiasco, we could understand that. But we finished all of that on the 2nd of August, 2020. New president was sworn in on 2020. Let us get our house in order.
Jonathan, this material here has been published before?
It's in my resignation letter.
And that resignation letter, the totality of it, ever hit the press?
It was in the press.
The totality of the letter? Because what you're saying here will certainly damage Anug's electoral prospects. Mr. Timothy Jonas sat right in the seat where Ruel Johnson is. And more or less, he sees Anug as a rightful third party that should have the space that AFC once had.
I'm not going to...
That what you've said is now recorded. Thousands of people watch this program.
I'm not going to...
And you're making a claim that I, as a person of integrity, and making and having political space to function independent of the two parties, my party was not behaving the way it should behave. I mean, that is what you're saying.
This is not the end of the story, Freddie.
Yeah, well, go on. Go on, Jonathan Yearwood, the white man from Kitty, go on.
70% white, you got to keep remembering.
So finally we decided that the date, eventually got frustrated and whatever, and I resigned from the executive.
No, but
I didn't resign from the
party.
membership.
Okay.
I didn't resign from the membership. I resigned from the executive because I wasn't tolerating that. Eventually an election was called. And according to Anug's constitution, nominations should be held 7 days before election day. 7 days. Right? So everybody can know who you're nominating. You can find out who this person is, who's that person, whatever. That was not done.
I can't believe what I'm hearing.
It was
here.
decided.
I can't believe what I'm hearing.
I don't know if it was decided because I was not part of the executive at that point in time. But the order came down. Nominations will be held at the time of the election. Now I ask, how the hell can you nominate somebody at the time of the election? This is a political party we're dealing with.
Could I ask you to avoid libel, but tell me... No, we can't avoid libel.
I'm not going to name them anyway.
I was going to ask you the name, right?
I'm not going to name them
That could get us into trouble, right?
I'm not going to name them.
But I think I know what you're talking about. I know these political actors. Anyway, Jonathan.
So my argument was, how can you have nominations for a political position
at the time of election?
At the time of the election.
That's an absurdity.
Of course it is.
Before.
When your constitution says, specifically it names 7 days, and then in 2 other places it says, given enough time. Nominations must be done with enough time before the election. But only once it was named at 7 days.
But perhaps this given enough time had a
logically,
loose interpretation.
Well, that's what it worked out to be. A very loose interpretation, right? You should be a politician.
He was a politician. We come to that. The two of you were good independent politicians. I don't know what happened. You want to continue before I come back to former politician Will Johnson.
So when all of this took place, I sat back afterwards and I asked myself, are these the type of people that I want to go into power with? if they're going to do this with a small political party now starting,
What about
what
if
is
they
going
got-
to happen when they get real power? Real power. And I want no part of that. Because I don't believe real power is going to change me. If real power is going to change somebody out there and make them for the worse, I don't want any part of them. I don't want any part of them. Because it's my integrity, by being associated with them, becomes that.
Jonathan, do you realize what you have done here this evening? Do you realize you have offered a perspective of people that criticize power but behave differently? But let's see if the word former politician sits comfortable with Will Johnston.
Mm-hmm.
Will Johnston formed and became the leader of
Not the leader, but yeah, go ahead.
Formed, well, at the time I knew you were the protagonist, the man with the chief idea behind Citizen Initiative.
Uh-huh.
Today, you're no longer with Citizen Initiative, but that party during the 2020 election with Miss Lam was very vocal in showing people the configurations and the machinations of this whole process.
Of the
Citizen Initiative. So I now would correctly use the adverb sadly. Sadly, Jonathan is no longer with Anug. We'll come to his political future. What's your political future? I don't think viewers know, and I don't know if I should say sadly, you've now become a high state official. You're cultural advisor again in the Ministry of Education.
Technical officer in culture, but it's essentially the functions are the same.
Are you now out of Citizen Initiative?
Well, yeah. Well, yes. In July of 2020, it was very public scandal, as it were. Manufacturing.
Oh, that's your personal business.
Yeah, no, but I have no problem addressing it.
Guyanese didn't jump on you for that.
Yeah, but what I'm saying, but
I am not interested in that.
Yeah.
At the time, I thought that your politics was exemplary, and I don't want to get into that.
But
that's personal.
it's fine.
That had to do with the party.
But what I would say is this: a principal decision was taken by the party at the time. I think was that. Just like Jonathan suggested with Akani Blair.
Yeah.
That if this is the case, then
you should take an exit temporarily.
Yes. Now, the name of the party, as it were, was called the Citizenship Initiative, which means that it was when we originally got together and had discussions, and Jonathan was part of those initial discussions. There was a debate.
Oh wait, he was part when the Citizen Initiative.
When we had the first
when the
initial
parameters
meetings.
were being explored. Jonathan Yearwood.
He was
part
naturally somebody who I had invited to meetings because of what I knew about his.
So
his
he
integrity.
subsequently defected.
No. There was no commitment on his part. And in fact, I think one of the reasons that he went on is that we had a deliberation on whether it was a civil mechanism or political mechanism. And it was a very long deliberative process. Because the whole concept of it was that it should be that what Guyana needed at the time, and it still needs, is an enhanced concept of participatory citizenship that went beyond the issue of just mere voting at elections, etc. And and I believe that Ron DeLam, particularly in the aftermath of what happened after March 2nd, 2020, exemplified that thing. And Shaz Ali as well. I think were the real leaders in the spiritual core of TCI, in that Rhonda was with Jonathan and others. She was our sole representative in the
Ashman building.
The Ashman's building.
Yeah.
She stayed there.
Yeah,
late.
yeah, I saw the videos. Yeah,
Thing. She.
Oh, her coverage was admirable.
Exactly. And in the 5 months that happened, that it took place after, a couple of things happened. Whenever there was, whenever the counting, etc., Shaz did up these graphics, etc., that helped and put it on Facebook and helped inform citizens of what was going on with accuracy, using his skills. And as COVID took over, one of the things that they started, spearheaded by Rhonda, was a hamper drive. And that was what really it was about. It was about participating in the acts of citizenship. Eventually, we, by the time, of course, elections came, we decided that we wanted to have a political exercise, but that wasn't the totality of what the initiative was about. It wasn't the citizenship party, or the Citizens Party. It was the Citizenship Initiative. And at least from my personal role in it, I've had a book that I've been working on since 2016. I wanted to put out since 2016. And elections came, and the idea was after elections, to go and focus on the book. What happened was that what happened after elections became incorporated into the subject of the book, inevitably. Because the book was supposed to be about...
That's interesting. I have to read this book.
I got to interview one. I got to at some point interview you with regard to the book.
Oh, the book can completed it yet?
No, it's still... I'm still working on it.
Interview me.
Yeah.
Anytime you want, for how many hours you want.
Yeah, because the idea is that, and again, it all ties into the concept of
Finish
citizenship.
that book quickly, man.
Is that what happened in the elections 2020? I spent a great deal of time before that researching what happened in the 70s, the first decade of the Republic. And I looked at it as a sort of parallelism of what took place 50 years after that. The politics, the society, etc. And of course how it tied into the greater issue of what was going on at the time, U.S. politics.
No, when is this book? What's the timeline for this book? Because if you went to the 70s, that is what people are saying that upset countless of people, that when you see what was happening in the 70s, this is a atavistic reversion to the depravities of the 70s. Now, if your book is going to make that kind of juxtaposition, it becomes interesting reading. Please finish the book. I looked at my Mango Pelter time, and we got 10 minutes left. And that is why I keep saying, when we started this program, we're not going to get into our... Jonathan, Ruel, and Jonathan, you take turns in answering the question.
Yeah.
Is there a political... Do you see a stable political future coming to Guyana in the next 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years? Let's start with Jonathan.
A stable political culture in Guyana?
Future. The totality of the country having a placid, encouraging, productive future.
That all depends on what the PNC in APNU decides to do. Yeah. I don't see anyone beating the PPP come 2025.
Yeah.
The PPP has made some gross mistakes so far, but a lot of what they've done, they're on a pretty good track. They can do a hell of a lot better. The problem with them is that they don't take advice from people like us Political advice.
Okay.
Political advice.
Because I could.
You do work
Well, they're
with them.
taking advice from him now.
Yeah, but not political advice. But the other thing is, this is 2022. We got 3 years to national elections again. And where are the voices of LJP? The voices of TCI?
LJP, for our viewers, the Leonard Cuman
Yeah.
Party.
Yeah. Where is his voice?
Liberty and Justice Party.
Where is his voice? He's in the opposition, but where is his voice? Where is TCI? Where is TNM? Where is ANOG? ANOG, LJP, and TNM have a joiner to get into parliament.
Yeah. It's another turn next year.
Supposed to be. Supposed to be. Because there's no guarantee that the person that's in there now will leave. There's no legal document that says he has to leave.
That compels him to leave.
That compels him to leave.
Yeah.
We can't physically go in there and drag him out. He's already in there. That's a different ball game altogether. However, I think that the way APNU is going now, all they're doing is chasing the independent voters further away from themselves.
Yeah.
They will win 28, 30 seats because of their party base, who are stoutly loyal to whatever they do. The PPP has that as well too.
Yeah.
Stoutly loyal, regardless of what the PPP does, they will always vote PPP. But if you go back to 2011, AFC had 7 seats in parliament. That's 35,000 votes. That means there are 35,000 people out there who at one time or the other decided that they are fed up of these two big parties. And there are a lot of young people coming up now with the internet who see what these two big political parties are doing and don't necessarily like what they're seeing. So they're looking for an independent third party to come to the fore. The problem is, who's coming to the fore?
But you're gone. That is a
Hold
situation.
Hold a moment,
in
Freddie.
that configuration.
Hold a moment, Freddie. All is not lost. All is not lost. If ANOG, and I personally think ANOG is the one that should step up, regardless of all the faults or whatever happened in the past, regardless of all of that. Get rid of certain rotten ropes within the party. I am dead serious.
Johnson,
I am dead
You
serious.
and I know who he's talking about.
Get rid of certain rotten
we
ropes
could
within
do
the
that
party.
deduction.
Get rid of them. No, get rid of them. Bring in new people.
You know who he's talking
No,
about.
I don't, because I
You
don't.
don't.
But I will say this.
You've
Just a thing.
You've been diplomatic this whole evening. You must
No,
know what he's talking
but Freddie, bring in new people
But
who are willing to come to the fore and say, look, we need to change our policy. When last has ANOG made a voice?
If they reach out to you,
They have.
you have, and you refuse?
Yes.
But you must have said, look, if I'm coming back, these strategies, these types of implementations
Freddie.
have to be embraced.
Freddie, you have to ask me whether I'm interested in it. And my answer really and truly is no. When I was with ANOG and I campaigned for ANOG, I told the population I am a reluctant politician. I don't like politics. Politics is a nasty game. I don't want to go sit down in parliament and listen to people cuss one another whole day. That's not what I want to do. What I would like to do is to guide from behind the scenes and make sure that they do things the right way. So I've now started an organization which advocates for good governance.
well,
It's not political. It's not political. It's just advocating for good governance. And that's what I want, irrespective of which political party is in power.
But look, if the president reaches out to you, Ruel is now a technical cultural officer in the Ministry of Education.
Ministry of Culture.
Ministry of Culture.
Yeah.
I think most people viewing this program would say, and I don't want to get into his personal business, that there had to be some tete-a-tete between Will Johnson and the government. It seems to my mind that this guy, Dr. Ofan Ali, I believe his intentions are good. And I don't believe he's a narrow-minded guy who say, no, I don't want to talk to him. He was in this party. If Dr. Ali says Jonathan Yearwood, I want you to come on board and I would not interfere with your work. What directions you would like to see political culture go in, government policy go in, and you would like an area to work in. And I would not interfere. I know the first thing you would say, well, look, I know you. You would like to have an independent office. Would you?
I would have two conditions. That's one. That my independence is paramount.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't try to zip my mouth.
Right.
Don't try to zip my mouth. Secondly, I will report to him only. I'm not reporting to any minister.
It's a presidential advisor.
The minister is the person who will throw a spoke in any wheel that I want to put out there. And they have the power to do that. I'm not going to report any PS. Because likewise, the PS will take instructions from the minister. And these instructions will bypass the president. The president doesn't know everything that goes on. He doesn't micromanage. He depends on those people to run their organizations efficiently. So if they don't tell him what is going on in their organization, he will not know. So for him to know what I want to do, it has to be I report to him.
Well,
And I have I state clearly here now, I have no objection to working with my government for the benefit of my country.
I hope this resonates with those
For the benefit of
who are
my
looking at it.
country.
I hope that we need people like you. I support Dr. Ali. I am saying now, I'm looking to the camera and saying I support Dr. Ali. I think his intentions are good. But I'd like to see people like you on board because my interaction with you over the years remind me of certain people in the 70s that helped mold me into the independent mind that I have. But time has caught up with us, and I want to extirpate or guillotine the diplomacy in Will Johnson. Ruel, you became the cultural advisor. After 2015, PPP lost the election, there was this new horizon.
Yeah.
I want you to use pellucid grammar.
Yeah.
As a young man entering government, because as a cultural advisor, you enter government. You were disappointed what happened after 2015?
Oh yeah, definitely. On several levels. Generally, I think that a tremendous opportunity was wasted with regard to the larger arc of our political history.
Oh, that's so sad to hear.
Yeah, this one, but very specifically, with regard to, but it ties in as well. I work in culture because I genuinely believe, to a great degree, that our political issues have cultural solutions. There's certainly an economic component to stuff we have to look at, but and you've dealt in part with the sociological contours of the issues that we have. But I think the arts, movies, books, poetry, music, etc., are critical in helping to heal the divide that we have. But they need an overarching and comprehensive policy framework for them to do the work that they can do. So that's the whole point of my engagement. And I like and you inferred correctly in that, yes, there was a sort of tete-a-tete, several people. And when I went to work with the Guyanese administration, I made it very clear. Again, this is Rupert Ryan who'd asked me to come on, was that my independence was not for sale. The same thing applies here. The difference is, and knowing my personal history, but including my history with the PPP, which has been a primarily antagonistic one in the past, is that the president himself I believe, has a genuine commitment to healing, or at least a functional operation of how the country is supposed to run. If I didn't believe that he did, I wouldn't be working with government. So, Mike, I mean, I guess I'm further along in that continuum of acceptance and action that Jonathan is. But again, I have had a specific role to play, and I can tell you this: the minister I work with is somebody, Ramson, who is not just, who not only listens but has ideas, which is critical as well, with regard to. So if I propose something, I don't get, well, first of all, most importantly, I don't get something pushed down the road in 3 years like has happened 2017 to 2019. But more importantly, I would get, no, this, I want this instead of this. And this is how it's supposed to function.
Thanks, Will. I want to end with you by saying, please get that book published. And if people are looking at this program and could play some strategic role in the realization of that book project. Jonathan, if I had a smartphone now, I would have picked it up, called the president and say, please go on your Facebook page or go on YouTube and listen to what Jonathan would say. That he is willing to work with the, you have, I'm using, you have the president's number inside here. If I have the president, the time was caught up with us, but let's hope Jonathan Yearwood has made an offer. And Will Johnson said he accepted a state position, but he made it clear his independence must be respected. Jonathan Yearwood, the white man, not the Portuguese man, the Caucasian man from Kitty.
The Guyanese man from Kitty.
The Guyanese man from Kitty. My apologies. Everything in this country is about ethnicity.
I'm Guyanese.
The Guyanese man from Kitty, and a person whose independent mind I can vouch for is saying, I would work with this government. I would have my ideas. Let me implement my ideas, and I will report to the president. I don't want nobody to interfere with my independence. I hope these offers are taken up. One offer has already been taken up. Jonathan and Will Johnson, give it a couple of months, and we're going to do this again using different angles, because by that time, you will have new dimensions in your life and travel further roads, and those will be the topic. It was enthralling, but most importantly, two things have been recorded in Guyanese history. That President Granger and Will Johnson didn't say it, but there's logical deduction. President Granger may have done some things in the area of culture that we never negatively that should not have been done. And Jonathan Yearwood have contributed to what we already know, but in his own style, that there are parties that come up and criticize the government, and you wonder if they're any different. Please go to YouTube and you can get this program. It's been an enthralling, history-making interview, forum, and program. We look forward to a repetition of this sometime in the future. Thanks for being with us. Just remember, Leonard Gildarie would not be here Wednesday, but the show must continue. Thank you very much, and a pleasant rest of this Monday evening.